Welcome everyone to the Wake Up Call channel. Previously in a few videos, I mentioned the operation known as Orion when referencing some of these school events that occur where somebody goes into a school with no real motive whatsoever and opens fire on civilians. 9 times out of 10, when these events do happen, the shooter always ends up dead. We never really ever have a trial. We're supposed to just take the news verbatim. Tell me where, other than a few cases, like Parkland, where we actually had a trial take place. We don't. These are government operations that are carried out on the public. Now, there's lots of mind control operations out there that we know of. We know of MK Ultra. We know of Operation Artichoke, Midnight Climax, and again, the previously mentioned Orion operation, which was put out into the open so that civilians would start asking for things that the government wanted, which of course was and still is to this day mass gun control over the civilians. And I think one of the hardest things to explain to people out there is that mind control is real. The reason that it's so hard to explain it to them is because they refuse to believe that they're actually under it. But if we think about most of the decisions that we make every day in our lives, they're influenced from some outside source. That's why the Bible is so specific about not being conformed of this world. In Romans chapter 12, verse 2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. In 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8, be sober-minded, be watchful. Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. And when I mention that we're all influenced in some way, we don't even realize that we're influenced because of us allowing the media and allowing the television and allowing these things into our lives. And even if you're somebody who blocks out the television, you're still surrounded likely by other people, family members or friends who do view the media and do influence you in a sense because of their worldly perspective getting influenced on you. That's why I talk about how important it is for children out there. You might say, well, I'm going to protect my kids. I'm not going to let them out into this matrix. I'm going to keep them protected. I'm not going to put them in the school system. But if you expose your child to some other children who are exposed to that system, they're going to corrupt your children with the same poison that they're being corrupted with. So when I talk about us being influenced, it can be the littlest thing that we don't realize. How we dress, right? Everybody out there dresses a certain way. A lot of the things that we're influenced by are things that were presented to us as children. That's why I talk about adults who can't break free from Disney or can't break free from some of the programming that they were put through. And when I say that, I mean things like Star Wars. Me specifically, I grew up and I was pushed, in a sense, I was pushed into watching sports and playing and participating in sports. That's how this works. That's how the human mind works. They realize that these things that we are open to, that become part of our lives, end up influencing us over the long term. So when you're a child, you can influence these things. You continue to watch those things. You continue to partake in those things. And then, of course, we see the infiltration of the government in everything in today's world, including things like sports. So when we talk about mind control, most people out there refuse to believe it's real. You mention mind control to them and they go, oh, that's just tinfoil hat stuff, right? But when you talk to them about hypnosis and you talk about, hey, hypnotism is, do you ever see this stuff on hypnotism where they put people under spells? They put people under hypnotism to stop smoking, stop drinking. Addicts go under hypnotism. Then they start going, well, hypnotism, yeah, I mean, I could understand that. Somebody's going under hypnotism to help out with an addiction or something like that. But they refuse to believe that they themselves are under hypnosis. But they are under hypnosis. All of us who allow technology or people who are indoctrinated with technology into our lives are exposed to hypnotism in some way, shape, or form. Which brings me to some of these mind control operations and some of the clips that I want to play for you, because it's so important for people out there to understand that it is real. They have to get past the narcissism of thinking that all the choices that they're making are independent choices, because they're not. They're not. The way they dress, something influenced the way you comb your hair. Something influenced the way you dress, what clothes you put on. Something influenced the shoes that you bought. right? Outside sources influence you. It's a form of mind control. If you can get past the prideful aspect of it and realize that it is real, then think about how the government can use that as a tool. Now, one of the things when I talk about Orion and I talk about Manchurian candidates, right? You've all heard the term Manchurian candidate, programmed assassins. When I mentioned earlier in the video, Midnight Climax, that's when the government openly admitted that they weren't just doing mind control experiments on willing subjects. By willing subjects, I mean people who signed up and were given money to participate in these experiments. The government started acting out with Midnight Climax and other CIA operations, doing this on the public without them knowing that they were doing it. Now, of course, anybody out there could research all these MK Ultra operations on their own. They choose not to do it. Why? Because all it takes for the common sheeple out there is to hear that the government did do those things, but they told us they stopped doing it, right? And what did the government really do? They renamed the operations, they burned a lot of the paperwork and moved it somewhere else so that they could never be caught. And once they mastered this, they unleashed it on the public. And it's happening around the world right now. When I talk about the events that happen at schools, most of the time these people never live to ever be held accountable for their actions, never give us a motive. But if you look at some of the ones that they've shown us in the past, all one really does have to do is look at the mug shots or the photographs of these people. And you could tell that they're under some type of massive psychosis. Anybody who looks at Adam Lanza, right? And you look at Adam Lanza, now you don't have to believe the story that came with Adam Lanza, because in some of these cases, they don't even need to actually carry out actual events. They've mastered the mind control so much so with the technology they have, they don't even need to create false flags. They don't even need to send Manchurian candidates out into the open to carry out these operations. They could just tell you by showing you a photo of somebody that this is what happened, case closed, no investigation, and the public believe it. That's what we've seen go on over the last couple of years, where people are so unhinged, they're so angry that somebody would even think that their own government would make these stories up, that they actually lose their mind over this stuff. The stuff I talked about with Jones, everybody out there is calling for Jones to be put in prison over questioning the news, right? Because it's out of the realm of their minds that the government could stage these types of things, and it is happening. They aren't even just sending Manchurian candidates out there anymore. They're making most of it up. But let me play for you some clips from Fletcher. First, I'll start with Fletcher Prudy, who some of you may know if you've seen the film JFK, was the character portrayed as X. He's a former government employee who exposed a lot of the agendas that the CIA and the FBI were involved in. People did used to come out and expose this stuff because there wasn't a fully compromised organization from the get-go. There were still outside people getting in, and then inside the CIA, there was operations that these people were not involved in that they started hearing about through the grapevine, started investigating themselves, and started exposing. Now, it's fully compromised, 100% compromised, just like the Republicans and the Democrats are fully compromised. In fact, Fletcher Prudy even talked about in the past some other operations, which I'll cover in a separate video, where the CIA was literally putting people in positions of power. They were putting people as candidates on the Republican and Democratic side, putting them into office, and that's what you see now. That's what I talk about with Trump. That's what I talk about with Biden. These are all government CIA operatives, okay, who are creating a massive psychosis on the population in the United States of America and around the world, because they're doing the same script. I've showed you guys this over the years. They're doing the same script with Trump in Argentina, in Spain. They're doing it all over, the same characters. All of them fit the same blueprint. These guys who are acting like they're rebelling against the New World Order to gain support. Again, this stops revolutions from occurring. People invest in these controlled leaders. It stops actual revolutions. But listen to some of these clips about mind control and how real mind control is, and how mind control itself, hypnosis, is really witchcraft, that it's an active thing that they do out in the open using chemicals on us, look up in the sky, look in our food, seances, and spell casting. And again, this is biblical, what God tells us about not being worldly, not seeking out mediums, to be able to discern what's real and what's not, which most people in today's world, including most churches, cannot discern what is real and what's not. This is a massive mind control experiment that's going on right now.
Can you just tell us what you know about the CIA's use of hypnosis in manipulating operatives?
Well, you know, the business of hypnosis is interesting, especially when I'm talking among British friends, because we have to go to you for the beginning of that. You may recall in your own history that Lord Oliphant, when he was the king's ambassador to the Ottoman Empire in Constantinople, came back with hypnosis to Great Britain. And this started the British Society of Psychic Research, which immediately spread into the United States. And hypnosis has been a very active program among certain areas through seances, through the use of chemicals and all that sort of thing. It's not limited to intelligence operations, and it's an old tool. Mind control is really what we call it today, and every effort possible is going into the mind control business. And the CIA is very active in that. Our MK Ultra program was pressing the limits of mind control, but that's a major international program.
To your knowledge, has it ever included hypnotizing assassins who would then carry out the job without really knowing what they were doing and be programmed to do that?
Well, as you know, hypnosis is used to make people do a lot of things. And the business of mind control with respect to conditioning assassins and conditioning people to other things is universal. We all know that. And there's no... the action of these people who are involved in assassinations, everything from Hinckley to James Earl Ray, we'll say, and others like that, Sirhan, and all these people are not normal. Something odd happened to them because, first of all, 20 years, 25 years have passed, and some of these people are still in this state that is not exactly normal. I think they were submitted to pretty heavy doses of certain kind of drugs or medicines, and probably to hypnosis and other devices for mind control. It's a very advanced art.
Use a very, very systematic brainwashing that comes out of experimentation from Nazi doctors and experimentation in the intelligence community with mind control research, and involves medical technology and is very, very sophisticated. And is systematic.
In one of his lectures, not available to the public, Hammond described his theories about the origins of satanic cult programming, starting with a Jewish collaborator in the Nazi death camps. His name was Greenbaum, alias Dr. Green.
Some of the people then doing the mind control research were Satanists, the Nazi doctors, and they have used all the technology. And in fact, the kid who came over, whose name was Greenbaum, changed his name and Americanized it to Green, and got an MD in the state of New York and became known as Dr. Green. And he's at the center of this process, and is still around. He's around mid-60s and still alive.
According to Dr. Hammond, Dr. Green developed a secret code based on the Greek alphabet, which the cult used to program its members. Examples: Alpha represented general programming. Beta was sexual programming. Delta was the program for killing. Gamma was the one that therapists should look out for. It was a deception program, teaching misinformation and trickery.
So again, those are a couple of clips that I wanted to play for you, including talking about that guy, Greenbaum, not to be confused with Greenblatt, somebody else we all know, but Dr. Green, who came over. And they were talking about, in that last clip, he was talking about satanic ritual abuse and how they were programming people. These are the things that I expose in a lot of my videos when I talk about the beta programming, right? Those are the celebrities who wear the leopard print, the delta programming, the gamma programming, okay? They program human beings. That's what we need to get through our heads. They program human beings to carry out acts, or in situations that we don't even realize, they're carrying out mind control programming on us. They're influencing us. And when you hear Larry Fink talk about behavioral control, this is what they're talking about. They're doing operations out in the open, and people think that it's their free will. That's why they always come out and they talk about free will, the American dream. They want you to think that all these things that you're thinking and doing are all being done by free will, but they're corrupting you and they're hurting you into a lot of the decisions that we're all making. Once you realize that the news is 100% formulated. It's a fake. That nothing that comes out on the news, with the exception of a few stories on local affiliate news, none of it's real. So when I say local affiliate news, that means if your next door neighbor was murdered, okay, and you see it on the news, obviously it's going to be a real story, right? They use the affiliate local news for that purpose. It ingrains trust in the news, especially if things are happening around you in your town. You will then no longer question if the news is real or fake. But if you watch it and you start looking at what they're telling you, and you start realizing that the words programming, television used to be called programming, is all there to program you, then you start waking up from this experiment. When you hear these politicians talk about the American experiment, what they're talking about is the experiment that they're doing on all of us, tricking us into thinking that the things that are going on are based on our free will. If the civilians break free from the technology, if they break free from the programming, the civilians can rise up and stop this thing from going any further. The problem is that most people out there, one, refuse that mind control is real. Two, they refuse that there's people that are this wicked that are doing these things. And then thirdly, most Christians out there who look at this as biblical, which it is, think that we're supposed to just lay down and allow Satan and his minions to do this to humanity. So you can look at it from whatever perspective you want to. I'm not here to tell you how to think. I'm not here to tell you what you should or shouldn't do. But I'm here to tell you to think, to actually use your mind critically, to observe these things, to snap out of it, as they say. When you're watching all this stuff going on around you and realize there's an agenda behind every story out there, and they waste no time, they waste no seconds on the national news for any other reason other than to program us. They're not trying to inform you. They're trying to influence you. The news is there as a conditioning mechanism. Those stories, those clips that I played for you, that's nothing compared to what's happening now. Those are clips, those are things they're talking about from the 60s and 70s, Operation Paperclip after World War II, where they're experimenting on human beings' minds. Do you know how much further along they are now? How much further along? This is something that's happening every second. Every time that we go on to one of our devices, a phone, a computer, they're hitting us. And it's not just with propaganda, okay? It's not just to tell us, well, this is what's happening in the world, and our perspective of the world being shaped by stories that they're making up. But they're also using it to convince us that we're still making these decisions freely. And they're going to enslave us by using these types of mind control operations on us. And that's exactly what they're doing with the left-right paradigm. In the future, I'm going to try to expose more CIA operations and go into detail about them before I eventually probably wrap up doing this stuff anymore. I mean, I'm at a point where this is going on for a long time. There's not many people who even listen anymore. It's more of a headache to get the content out. But I do want people out there to learn about these government operations, to talk about these things more in detail, like Operation, Midnight Climax, for example, or Orion, so that people could really have a better understanding of it. So I'm going to get some more content about these specific things out there. I have a lot of books that detail specifically CIA operations that have been done on the American public. Okay, and this goes on around the world. I mean, you go through any book, that gives you real information about the CIA, the most common word you'll see in that book isn't CIA. It's the word Mossad. Always remember that. So in the future, I'll try to get more of those out as I continue to wind down doing some of this content. I thank you guys, or any content I should say, but I thank you guys for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always, and your families.